Thank you for attending this session. We've got an hour. We're quite strict to the hour. So I'll do the introduction now and keep admitting people as I see them come in. This session is all about upskilling, as you have read in the email and also the description. It's an open discussion. We want everybody to contribute, and we run these sessions every Friday morning at 10 a.m. And we're hosting a series of 6. The first 3 are titled. We've got subjects around the first 3, and then the last 3 are really as a result of our findings and very much in your court, so to speak. They are being recorded simply so we can upload them onto our website. Our website is NELSIP.com. So feel free to jump on there. All of our events are on there and all the information on there about the LSIP within the region. This session, as I say, will run an hour, for an hour. I'm conscious of people's time. We're not expecting, when you give examples, we're not expecting people to give examples of individual companies, just what sector and what levels of upskilling they are. And then we'll leave 15 minutes at the end just for, AOB really. So as I'm conscious of time, I'll hand over to my colleague, Sean. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mark. As Mark says, a big group today, so thank you all for joining. We've got 5 questions and we'll get on to those in a moment. If you want to contribute, please feel free to do so. Raise your hand using the raise hand in the toolbar, and don't forget to drop it once you've asked your question or made your contribution. Bob will serve as the ringmaster in terms of asking you to contribute at points in time. We'd ask you just to introduce yourself very briefly when you make your contribution, so we can keep the flow of the discussion. It is an hour. There's a lot of people on the call. The intent of this is a discovery session, really to get into things that are on your mind and your experiences. We'll then follow up, and you can follow up with Mark as well on particular issues. It really is intended to be acted a fairly intensive session, but to collect lots of information very quickly from subject matter experts such as yourself. So on that point, if I could kick off, please, what I'd like to do is combine the first 2 questions. I'd like to get your experiences of what employee upskilling you're involved in, and where you see the main areas of demand coming from. And I'll open that to the floor, please.
Okay. Melanie's first in on the hands up, so thank you.
Thank you. I was hovering ready for this. So hi, yes, my name is Mel Crosby. I am the principal of Gateshead Council Learning and Skills, so it's a post-16 provider. So from our point of view, our main areas for upskilling is around within the local authority and the NHS. We do a lot of level 2, level 3 skills development, preparing people for that higher level stuff, both to employed people within those areas, but also volunteers and residents in general. And we feel that for us and for lots of other sort of local authority based training providers, that whole skills development within the public sector is really essential. We have a lot of colleagues across the local authority that will be attending some of your other sessions, and things around health and social care in particular, and around construction are the 2 main areas that we see we need to have a lot of upskilling.
When you say upskilling, you talked about 2s and 3s. Can you give us a flavour of that? Do you see that shifting, or do you see it being predominantly at the 1s, 2s and 3s level?
It depends really on the area, really. So in health and social care, we're looking at everything from entry level 3 right through to degree level, and we're developing, for example, graduate pathways and non-graduate pathways into adult social care and children's social care as a career. Same within construction, everything from those lower level apprenticeship based skills, if you like, through to management within the construction industry in that area. But then for our staff that probably do, I suppose, more office-based jobs, really level 2, level 3, and some level 4 is where those sit. So yeah, it really does depend on the sector in the industry that they're in.
Super. Thank you, Melanie.
Jacob, do you want to go next?
Hi everyone, yeah, so my name's Jacob Tribe. I'm the Interim Business Development Manager at the Education Training Collective. So we're a group of colleges and training providers based across Teesside. So I'm predominantly responsible for apprenticeships, but we also deliver boot camps, online learning, AEB. The levels that we mainly deliver are level 2 and 3, but we also deliver the higher stuff, 4s up to 6s. Predominantly for construction, for the lower stuff, it's mainly the construction, and then obviously going more higher in terms of engineering and law. The main areas that we've sort of seen the demand for at the minute is mainly through the NHS and sort of the work they want to do. And then also obviously with Tees Works and all the work that's going on down there, there's a lot in terms of engineering and that sort of work.
And in terms of when you talked about construction and level 2, are you getting a strong demand signal from the construction businesses at level 2? And what does that look like? What do the apprentice programs look like at level 2?
Yeah, so this carpentry and joinery is the main one. We're seeing a lot of demand from that. Electrical is another big one that seems to be growing continuously. I think what's the other main one that we do? It's brickwork as well. That's another one that seems to be growing as well. And it's scaffolding as well. Scaffolding is the other main big one that we seem to have a lot of demand for at the moment.
Right, thank you. And are you seeing any of the sort of themes that are coming through in terms of sort of modern construction, such as even retrofit and modern construction, or is that still something that people are talking about, but you're not necessarily seeing come through in demand yet?
Yeah, so mainly over our red card provision, we are starting to see that come through. A lot of it is still the traditional stuff, but we are starting to see a growth in that area, and also the green energy.
And on the green energy, when people talk about green energy, sometimes I get a different answer depending on who you talk to. How would you describe that? What does that relate to in terms of the skills that they're looking at, the demand?
Yeah, so obviously we've got the Green Energy Hub, and we're starting to work with a number of local and national companies within the area. In terms of the green energy, it's the stuff around carbon capture and that sort of area, if you like, that we're starting to see the skills, the demand for skills for.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious we've got a lot of people on the call. Anybody else want to comment initially?
Yeah, well, Alison's got her hand up, Sean. So Alison,
I'm sorry, I don't see that. Thank you.
Sorry.
Hi, Sean. Alison Maynard, Deputy Principal at New College Durham and also North East Institute of Technology. We are very much the same, but engineering, but not necessarily in engineering. Obviously, we're doing a substantial amount of work around the net park companies, but when we're getting into the companies, they're actually looking for team leader, conflict management. So it's all of the sort of business type of courses that they're wanting to upskill their current workforce for. Obviously, we are doing engineering, digital as well. So digital right across engineering, health. Some of it is basic engineering, digital at level 1, level 2. Construction, like what Jacob said, property maintenance has been significant growth in that area. Carpentry and joinery, significant, and also the retrofit. So we are launching the level 2 retrofit in April. That's through the North East IoT, and heat pumps and electrification. So a bit of a widespread, but pockets of growth and demand for upskilling across the North East.
Great, thank you, Alison.
Good. Karen McParlin was on my screen, and are you still there, Karen? Yeah, I can't see you now.
Oh, yes, I am here.
Did you want to come in? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So Karen McParlin, Senior Employment and Skills Coordinator for South Tyneside Council. We see businesses who are needing to recruit or upskill individuals from some skill shortage areas such as welding, non-destructive testing, engineering. Sometimes these are more sort of niche elements of those specific job roles, so some specific sort of qualifications that are needed. There are national skill shortages in those areas, but where we do have businesses wanting to relocate into our area, we need to be able to show that we can reskill or upskill from other industries, and take so that they have confidence that they can come here and that the skills will be available to them.
And when you have those discussions, I guess the other side to that discussion is, do you sense from the current employers that there's a concern for them that those new inward investments will actually take the skills they currently have, and there's not enough skills to go around?
Yes, that certainly would be the case. Yes, there is a small pool of those individuals, and those individuals don't tend to be sitting waiting for work. They do tend to be already in work somewhere, or commuting out of the area a lot of time.
Yeah.
But I think that as we move on and industries change, there will be jobs in industries which do become obsolete, and that ability to take those individuals and give them the skills needed with growing organisations.
Thank you. You touched on the digital a little bit. Has anybody else got anything to add on digital? It's something we're seeing come through across the sectors, and I guess there's two aspects to it. One, across the sectors, and then the more advanced digital skills, which are actually sort of almost in the digital functional domain as well.
Yeah, Judith has her hand up. Judith, I don't know whether that's relating to Sean's question on digital or the earlier point, but do you want to come in?
Yes, on both really. I mean, we're working with employers, and there's definitely a staff shortage. They're quite prepared to upskill, but there's a shortage of people that they want to that are available with the ability to be upskilled to the relevant level. But digital is becoming a very increasing important part of anyone's job role. We're doing manufacturing, engineering and logistics. Sorry, I'm from NEAA College.
Thank you. Okay, before we move on, anybody else got anything to add on this? The one question I'd like to finish on this section is are you getting enough from employers in terms of their upskilling demand, their requirements, the clarity you're getting? Is it sufficient? Jacob's
got his hand up. I don't know. There's probably a lag between people putting their hands up, Sean, and you. So,
there's enough hands now.
Please come in, Jacob.
Yeah, just going back to the digital, it's an area that we are growing. We've started to run 4 new apprenticeship standards. There's digital marketing infrastructure technician, software developer and network engineer. So that's a variation of level 3s and 4s that we've started to run purely based on skills needs of the area. There's a demand for it, so obviously we've started recruiting for those areas.
Right.
And Chris has got his hand up as well, Sean. So Chris, I don't know whether you want to come in.
How are we doing, folks? Sorry, I'm in Barbados at the minute, where I'm from, in a hotel room with dodgy internet connection. So apologies if I'm in and out. I mean, on digital, I think we spoke last time we spoke to this CBI. They're looking to cease inward investment due to the lack of perceived supply of labour in the digital sector in the region. And, from our perspective, and I think collectively, you would find that there is an oversupply of skills training. There's space, I think, within all of our programs for across the range, including boot camps, full-time courses, etc. And employers are very clear that there isn't the talent, but that connection between that entry-level job that we spoke about, so not an entry level that we would describe it in education, that opportunity for someone that's perhaps done a short boot camp to be able to then to get into a job and build those skills through an apprenticeship program, that isn't being taken up in the digital sector in the main, because generally micro businesses, generally small businesses, generally competing with larger firms who are doing that training. So I think something needs to happen in that space, because you know, often it's training providers who are blamed for the lack of talent, and actually there is an oversupply of training in this sector. I think.
Chris, just on that point, what does the company do if it needs the skill, and you've probably got people who are coming out of programs but don't have the work experience? So what's their response to that? You know, if they're not prepared to take the people that haven't got the work experience, what do they do to fill the vacancy?
Well, I think it's going to do what it's doing now, which is driving up the cost base in that area and creating a challenge for the whole industry. And I think the industry needs to come together and innovate, like they are in the construction companies in the region, who are recognising they need to invest more in training and are doing something about it with a lot of innovative ideas that we could all share with you. But they're so focused on the fact that they've got products they need to get out, they've got, you know, software they need to design, etc., etc., small micro businesses, profit going into my pocket. That's not going to help the region or themselves. So I think, you know, collectively, you know, I don't know, through Dynamo, I mean, we're working with, as other colleagues are, Dynamo, Sunderland, Software City, trying to get the message out, but the industry is very inward facing, and all you get is that there's a lack of supply. And you know, we've even got a drain into other places now, haven't we? Because you can work in the northeast in London now since lockdown. You know, you've got a lot of talent that are not staying in the region because they can earn more, but live in the region. So I don't know what the solution is, but I think that the industry has to have a look at itself and try and think about how it might create an entry-level job, create a bit of mentoring and support, and look at an apprenticeship program at the higher levels to try and fill those gaps, and also recognise, as I think we do as an organisation, that those people aren't going to stay with you forever necessarily unless you treat them well. So it's looking holistically, I think, in that sector, and perhaps taking some of the learning from, as I say, a good example we've got is in the construction sector that I'm happy to share at any point, and other colleagues will have those examples where employers are coming together to solve the challenge.
Thank you. Sorry, Sean.
Yes, no, I've got one. I think Alex has still got his hand up. Alex, can you finish this section off for us? Have you still got a question or point?
Yeah, thank you. So Alex Muir, assistant principal at Derwentide College. So like lots of the other colleges, we've seen growth in things like construction and that type of thing. But one of the kind of going across all employer conversations is around how they support their staff's mental health and well-being. The staff that they do have there, they want to keep there in work, and how we can kind of raise awareness around mental health, and that's something that across all of our programs we're being asked by employers to embed in or do as standalone qualification, predominantly at level 2.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for your contribution on 1 and 2. Let's move on. Let's talk about the actual delivery. And clearly, when we talk about upskilling, typically, well, usually people are actually employed. So there's an aspect here which sort of says, how do you access learning, and how do you ensure that it's delivered in a way that meets employers' requirements. I'm interested in terms of what kind of asks are you getting from employers in terms of the delivery of upskilling programs, and how does that match to your ability to be able to meet that? Who wants to kick off?
So is this, just to clarify what you're asking, Sean, so are there particular asks about online delivery or in the workplace delivery or modular delivery? Is that what you...
And yeah, absolutely, Bob. And we regularly pick up that people always assume that apprenticeships are a day out, a day release, but you can do it in other ways. And so it's really about what is it that you're asked when you upskilling, in particular when people are at work. Obviously, they're in a full-time job, and how the delivery aspect, the operational aspect. I'd be interested in your experiences in terms of your working with employers on this.
Jeff's got a hand up. Jeff.
Hi, I'm Jeff Watson. I'm the project manager at Newcastle University within the Institute of Electrification and Sustainable Advanced Manufacturing. I'll take a breath now. We're currently 4 months into a project about delivering training pathways and writing content for short courses, CPD, modules anywhere from level 3 to level 7 degree apprenticeships in the power electronics, machines and drives industry. And our engagements with industry to date have highlighted quite categorically the difficulty they have in, sending staff to attend face-to-face meetings. So one of the big parts of our project is identifying new ways of delivery and not just offering a single solution to everybody, or one solution to one company and face-to-face or an online only to this company, but allowing everyone to have access either to video content, live online sessions, or indeed face-to-face, or attending their work site as well wherever possible. So I think it is a very pertinent and big question on how we do that going forward.
Thank you, Jeff.
Melanie's got her hand up again.
Yeah, hi. So we don't have many problems at all for when an employer employs somebody young to do an apprenticeship. We don't have any problem at all with releasing them from the job. So I'm just going to I'm about to go into another meeting, so I'm just hide that. But what we do seem to have problems with is when it's an upskilling apprentice. So when it's an existing member of staff, they don't want to release them from the workplace. As I say, so young people are absolutely fine, but older people, they don't want to release them from their usual jobs to go and do training. And sorry, with that, I need to leave because I do have another meeting to go, but my colleague's on the call as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Thanks for your contribution.
Karen, do you want to come in?
Thank you. Yes. We do hear from our businesses to say that they would like short modular training where they can essentially top up the skills to suit the needs of industry. And again, touching on my point earlier on, the more we evolve and the more skills evolve, those short modular sort of CPD units are critical to help to bridge the skills gap within organisations. But I do agree with Jeff's point as well about one size doesn't fit all, sort of have that sort of range of options available. I know there was the emergent skills pilot, which was a modular training scheme isn't the right word, project, which was last year and the year before, and I don't think they got quite the numbers that were expected. However, I do believe that was a very difficult time. Businesses were coming out of COVID, there were supply chain issues, there were all sorts of issues within organisations. So I do think the modular approach is what's being asked, and I do think that they would get numbers in normal circumstances. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Did you come in again, Jeff, or is your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted one item I'd forgot to add is certainly in some of the larger industry organisations where they have maybe their own training department, we would also offer train-the-trainer packages so that then they can deliver some of this internally themselves. So it's much more flexible for them.
Thanks, Jeff. And we'll touch on funding later on, but I am keen to sort of just explore in the context of upskilling whether things like the availability of apprentice levy and the levy system has changed the nature of upskilling that you're experiencing, those requests that you're experiencing from businesses, whether that's had an impact in terms of where they're choosing to do their upskilling. Anybody got any experiences to share?
Karen,
Sorry,
go for it.
No worries. I was just going to say, sorry, it's me again. But just to say, yeah, with regards to apprenticeships and upskilling in-house, we have I've had experience of businesses saying, yeah, really want to utilise the apprenticeship levy, can absolutely see the value in it, but cannot release somebody 20% off the job training, which is what Melanie was saying before. I just wanted to sort of back up that that point.
And on that 20%, are there any experiences of how you can do that without necessarily having a day off?
Yeah,
that's what gets.
Yeah, so I think when I've had conversations with providers, absolutely that is the case. I believe, but I think from a business point of view, it's sort of still difficult to commit to because they're not entirely sure how that is going to sort of work and how that's going to pan out. So yes, I've certainly had that conversation with providers in the past, and they have said as long as it's doing something different that is relating to the qualification, that 20% off the job training could count. But businesses for some reason still haven't been massively convinced, some of them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Karen. Judith, did you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's not 20% now, it's the 6 hours, but the worst thing they ever did was call it 20% off the job, because it's such a misnomer. It's 20% of their working time that they can put towards their standard. So there's lots of, a good provider will go in and map it from the beginning and see what they're already doing, and it's all around that. However, it's like the word apprenticeship, people still think 16 to 18-year-old trades. So that I think that's a bigger problem than actually delivering it personally.
Right. So it's employers' understanding of what it is, and perhaps the way that a historical view of the way it's delivered is probably getting, because you might not even be getting to talk to them because that's putting them off in the first instance.
Yeah, quite.
Yeah, I'm interested in that question. Do you think that misunderstanding generally is an inhibitor to the good providers getting in the door to explain actually how you would tailor it? Is that a sort of, are we falling on the first hurdle with that question? Really, I'm interested in any response to it. Silence.
Let me ask a follow-up question then, which is related in some respects, but is a challenge. One of the things we hear in terms of challenges sometimes is the provision, the ability to actually match operational requirements which are outside standard hours, and the ability for providers to actually be more flexible in terms of providing training at times, end of shift, start of shift, 6:30 in the morning, that type of thing. Is that something that gets raised with you?
John.
Hi, John Shaw from Gateshead Council. I'm the business development manager, so we don't majorly have an issue with that. We have in the past where we've delivered quite a lot of social care apprenticeships. We've had people meeting people at 10 o'clock at night, very, very early in the morning. I think that probably leads well because the person who's delivering it has that experience of the industry, so is kind of used to that format of being on an early shift and a late shift. In the past, when we've done hospitality, we actually had somebody in a nightclub. I'm not 100% sure they were working, but they were definitely assessing in some shape or form. But I think that's flexible, and that's one of the things about being flexible with the employer. It doesn't always work the other way around, but I don't see that being a problem.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Judith?
Judith's got a hand up.
Yeah, go on, Judith, sorry.
Yeah, just to come in on that again, the issue isn't the provider and the issue isn't the employer, but what we have to be mindful of is the apprenticeship funding rules, because it has to be within their working time. They can't have overtime to do that. That sits outside the hours. So often the biggest issues we have to overcome is not the employer and not the provider, but working within the compliance rules.
Fine. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's good. Thank you for that. I'm just let's move on, if we may. Let's move on to the fit in terms of employers' requirements and the curricula, and I'll include standards in there just based on what Judith just said, because clearly in the LSIP there's an emphasis which says LSIP should be focused on aligning the needs to the standards that are becoming increasingly available as it relates to the delivery and the delivery capability. So I'm interested as to how well do the demands coming out of the organisations you're working with, how well does that fit against your current curricular qualifications, or are you finding that you're being asked for things that aren't necessarily part of the current curricula? And I'll add to that as well, anything that's starting to emerge as potential future curricula, how do you pace that curricular development and start to introduce that into the learning qualifications as well? And how hard is that? Anybody want to kick off?
John's got his hand up. Thanks, John.
No problem. I think from our point of view, it fits in quite well because as a local authority training provider, we don't particularly want to compete with the colleges. Nor probably could we compete with the colleges who tend to deliver some of the technical qualifications, whereas some of the stuff that we deliver in the curriculum areas that we have can help employers get the lower level skills, which potentially complement what the colleges and bigger organisations do. So I think that the needs kind of fit with us very well. And obviously we do the classroom sessions in the workplace and online as well.
And how easy is it to sort of, when I think of the two themes we talked about previously, we talked about modular delivery and qualifications. How easy is it to actually construct a modular system that then builds into a qualification over time? And how interested are employers in doing that as part of their requirements for upskilling?
Alex?
Mic off. I think one thing I would say that the opportunity to do that is definitely there, but one of the big challenges recruiting the staff ourselves to be able to have enough people to do it at capacity and at scale. We want to do it. It's just, can you get the people in? Electrical engineers, can you get the people in? Carpentry, can you get the people in? All of the things you talk about, and also paid at the right level, often to make them jump from industry to come and work for an FE provider to then do that role, which is one of the major challenges.
Thank you. And
we could just take Alison and Chris, who both got their hands up, Sean, and maybe you come back on that. Yeah.
Yep.
I think again, I would echo what Alex says. The staffing crisis is getting worse, and we're all fishing in the same pool. And I would imagine the staff are going from one college to the next for an extra £5–10. I think the other thing is part of the beauty of the North East IoT is that collaboration, and that's certainly the North East IoT is coming up for relicensing in the next 2 years. So we've got to get our ducks lined up in the next year. But it's the colleges that are in there at the moment working collaboratively to see what they can deliver. So what expertise has one college got that other hasn't got, and plan that curriculum to meet the employer needs. So there's a big piece of work going on at the moment to see how we can do that, Sean.
Thank you, Alison.
Thanks, Alison. Chris, do you want to come in, and then James?
Yeah, it was just on the sequencing of the curriculum. I think all things are possible. In the not too recent past, we've moved away from kind of a modular approach. A lot of our qualifications have moved into a more holistic basis, particularly if you look at apprenticeship standards and study programs, etc. But in my lifetime, that those very modular, unitized, credit-based systems have been in place, and I think we can certainly work on them. One of the interesting things I've noted about boot camps is that we've been able to move away from the qualification framework, which often is a barrier to being flexible. You can always do it, but you're often delivering additionality or outside of that framework. So I think looking at that could be interesting, particularly if someone's got a micro challenge. You can design and develop something for them, notwithstanding the skill shortages in FE that colleagues have described.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. James, do you want to come in?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm James Edge, one of the directors from Newcastle College. Really, it's just to echo some of the points. So what Chris said, the sequencing if the curriculum has never been so important, especially in health and science. So working with employers, they're very aware that we need to make sure we've got things like manual handling covered early on in the curriculum. So when they go out, they've got that basic skill set. Likewise, in science, can the students, the learners, actually follow a standard operating procedure? And then very similar to Alex and Alison, there is a bit of a staffing crisis and we are all sharing that same pain. But it's trying to have the time to upskill the current staff, especially in the health sector with clinical skills. So we're all trying to find adult nursing and an increase in mental health. So in Newcastle, we're finding a lot more demand for counselling courses, but trying to find suitably qualified counsellors is providing quite a challenge. So I echo what everyone's saying and agree with it, really.
Yeah, and I know Judith endorsed that point on staffing in the chat as well. So I see a lot of people nodding on the screens as well on that point. So thanks, James.
Thank you. Thanks for that. I mean, it's I guess my sort of supplemental question, which I think is a theme that's probably emerging in the background here, is that skills shortage in terms of teaching capability, like any skills shortage or scarce resource across the economy at the moment, is probably not going to go away, and it probably is going to get worse because that's the function of the labour market. So my question would be, and I think Alison touched on it a little bit for the IoT, what's the model moving forward? If you assume it's not going to change, or it's, there'll be things that can do around the margin, but if you assume that scarce skills, particularly on some of those higher end learning requirements, it will remain scarce. What is the methods of delivery going forward, or different of approach, which means that it actually does get addressed? And does the IoT play a part in that, a significant part in that? Because we've touched on level 2s and we've touched on the importance of making sure people are qualified for the employment market, and then when you get to level 3, 4, 5, we're into the scarce skills, and sometimes some of the level 2 skills are scarce and hard to fill vacancies, but they're in larger numbers, and they're not the same skill profile as the 4s and 5s, which are in smaller numbers. And how did the colleges contend with those smaller numbers, but ensure that at a regional level there's sufficient supply of those skills? I guess is a dilemma that we are sort of seeing. Alison?
I think, going back to what I said about the IoT, that is one of the main purposes of the IoT, to pool all that expertise. But I also think it's working, certainly with big companies. We're waiting to see the outcome of Shell UK. So I think a lot of us around the table have put in bids to work with them. And the talk is that they will invest in upskilling or upgrading the salaries to try and match industry. And I think that's where some employers have to be socially committed, or social responsibility, to actually invest for us in their workforce. I know of another big organisation that's not wanting to do that, but they want to recruit the students. So I think it's working with employers to see whether they've got any leverage in increasing the salaries for staff that are going to be training their workforce.
Thanks, Alison.
Judith had a hand up.
Yeah, one of the other problems really is, again, it comes back to compliance. The ASFA have made it much more difficult now to take on associates to help deliver some skills and things, because you then trigger off the subcontracting model, which is difficult. So yeah, sometimes our rules are our biggest issues to overcome.
Thank you, Judith. And I think that's probably a good segue into the last question, because I think this one probably follows from that as well in terms of funding, upskilling and funding. And I'll throw in, because the North East IoT is going to be part of a combined authority going forward, that's probably going to have an implication for funding as well. So I'd be really interested. I think Chris touched on it earlier about sometimes having to meet the qualification frameworks can be a barrier. I think that people have referred to this in some of the answers in terms of some of the funding doesn't necessarily enable some of the things you need to do. So I'd be very interested in views on funding as it relates to upskilling. Judith, have you got your hand up still? Is that from before? Or is it...
So it was, but I mean, I can add on to that, you know, I mean, the funding levels haven't changed on the whole. There's been a few that they're looking to readjust. So the funding that we draw down for an apprenticeship, we're competing with industry to take on those people. And whilst people, you know, training providers, you're never going to get rich, that comes to a point where, you know, there's no more to be squeezed out, but industry is going to increase those prices for those people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chris and Alison have got their hands up here, so can I go to you first, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the funding regime is built around a very historic and very traditional model in the main. So you've got, you know, you need a cohort size in order to do something, and often there isn't a large enough cohort where you've got a micro challenge. So you know, and we're all working in a much more flexible way. So, you know, there's online and distance blended models that work, but certainly when you've got large bits of kit or technical equipment, that doesn't necessarily help, even though there are some, you know, virtual models that you can use. So I guess boot camps have been really interesting. They're a little bit more flexible, but at the moment, you know, if you want a course to upskill somebody in something, you're going to need a few bodies, and often there aren't a few bodies. So it is based on a really historic model. You know, particularly for adults, it's still built around people coming of an evening for 3 hours. You know, that's how you'd make it work, really, and that's not really a huge demand that we're seeing at the moment.
Alison, thanks, Chris.
Just 3 points. I think employers are very confused about funding. You know, I think we get confused about funding. They are absolutely lost in the mire, and with everything changing as well, you know, nothing stands still for long in education. I think probably again, all of us around the table have heavily invested. Certainly at New College Durham, we've invested heavily in a business development unit, bringing in salespeople, bringing in people who can go out and work that minefield for employers. And then apprenticeships. I mean, we've just been given a tender for the North East to look at re-engaging SMEs who haven't had apprentices in the last 2 years. So that's a big piece of work that we're engaged in at the moment. But what we're finding is apprentices are actually leaving their apprenticeship for unsustainable and employment without training. And that I haven't seen. I've seen it in mainstream, but I haven't seen it coming through, and it's starting to come through in apprentices who are actually leaving their training.
Just so I understand that point, Alison, they're leaving for opportunities that don't require the qualification just because they might be better paid in the short term.
Yeah, that payment is now taken over that longevity of getting a trade or getting a qualification. That's becoming evident now.
That's great, thank you. It's not great, clearly, but
I know what you mean.
yeah, I understand it. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, we're from an apprenticeship perspective, we're seeing the same around withdrawals. People jump in because of cost of living and things, and it is becoming a bit of an issue. And then also from a funding perspective, you know, we work with lots of large public sector organisations, and just in terms of with devolution in mind, you know, for certain things, in the Tees Valley, people on a program through their bespoke employer-led fund route, but through ESFA we can't. But from a trust perspective, they're thinking, well, why can't both people be funded? So it's quite a challenging conversation to have. You feel as though you're sort of having to upskill the trust and their knowledge around the funding, which actually it shouldn't be that complex. For them, we should be able to just, you know, provide a solution.
Thanks, Alex. Karen?
Thank you. Very similar to what Alex has just said, actually, in terms of the devolved areas and the availability of funded training. So I'm working on something at the moment and have been doing, as an inward investment inquiry, have been doing quite a lot of research, and what's available in Tees Valley is completely different to what's available here, and then what's available north of Tyne is also what's different to what's available here. And that makes it very, very difficult, because if I'm proposing something for to a business, you know, I'm saying, well, if your person lives in Tees Valley, they can access this, and if your person lives here, well, they can't access that, but they can access something else. So it's you know, it's really tricky, and hopefully going forward that will rectify itself with devolution. But I think you know, we need to stay away from the sort of postcode lottery side of things, which is what it feels like. And then on a similar point, well, it's the same point really. I had a business when I was in Durham who was working with Tees Valley, and they had a wonderful model set up where they took people from job centre, trained them up, and they went straight into employment. And we tried to replicate that in Durham, and it wouldn't work because we didn't have you know, devolved skills budgets, and it didn't work under AAB. So we actually ended up at, well, not completely losing that business, but it's an empty premises. So it, you know, it has huge impacts on the economic prosperity of the area, whether it's inward investment organisations coming in and choosing to be somewhere where they can access all of that funding, or whether it's our existing businesses not being able to access what the other areas are.
So just on, I mean, just on funding for existing businesses, for existing employees, and obviously the larger employers pay a levy, and the ones who don't pay the levy can access funding which is subsidised by the levy, and yet the levy, we hear examples of lower levies returned because it's not spent, or it's spent on other things. Interesting, you know, how does the levy fit into all of this when it relates to upskilling? Because I guess, you know, we've talked about employers needing to be accountable and take responsibility for doing training, and they being taxed, and I use that in inverted commas because that's often how it's referred to by employers, and they probably rationalise their internal training cost structure to reflect that, and therefore that has an implication as well. It'd be interesting in your views of where levy fits in and whether there's any sort of opportunity there.
John, did you want to go?
Yeah, thank you. I think there's definitely a kind of good interest with large companies who pay the levy to be able to claw some of that back, whether that's kind of like a political backlash or a budget backlash, and you know, maybe he's working with employers who are spending money in other areas of training to try and demonstrate how actually you don't need to spend that because you've got this amount of levy that should be available. So it does ease your way in with larger employers when they've clearly got money available. Where levy becomes a bit of an issue, certainly from us as a training provider, is the levy transfer, where you can transfer it to other companies, or other companies can access our levy, where really from as a business and a business model, are we going to transfer levy to an employer where we can't deliver the apprenticeship because it's our levy? So we could transfer money to a local business, and just before anybody said, we don't control that, it's done by HR, so we have no real control over that. But if we see transferring our own levy to a company to deliver business administration that we deliver, then we can't deliver it. So that becomes a little bit of a problem, because we can't deliver using our own levy when it's transferred.
Thanks, John. Karen?
Yeah, thanks. So just on that point with regards to how sort of the levy fits in, I think a lot of the employers that I see that they come to us because they need the skills now, or they're moving into the area and they need the skills. They want the short, sharp training. They need to know that those skills are going to be there fairly quickly. Apprenticeships are fantastic, but you need to plan those in, and you need to plan your skills, and businesses aren't always great at that in terms of reacting to what they're going to need in sort of 2, 3, 4 years time. So often it's about, this is what I need now because I've won a contract, or I'm moving to an area, or whatever it is. So yeah, so the levy, I think, and that those sort of short, sharp training are separate things. We need both as a, you know, to complement each other, but I don't think they can sort of replace each other either.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Karen. Okay, I'm conscious of the time.
Sorry, Sean, can I just go one question? And this may be a naive question, but please bear with it, because we're not steeped in the, you know, the day-to-day delivery of the educational requirements that you guys are. But the Alison touched on the importance of business development. As we're out talking to different providers, it's clear that that's a key role as you know, in terms of helping employers navigate a complex system. And I think that's been touched on through the call a number of times. And is the importance of that and the need to resource that recognised anywhere in the funding models that you work to? No, people are shaking their heads there. So that's just something that you need to absorb within your business model. And yeah. Okay. Thank you. It's interesting.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. I'm conscious of the time. We will finish on the dot at 11 because I know everybody's got priorities. Is there anything else anybody would like to raise? We posed 5 questions as the start for 10. Is there anything that you'd like to talk about in terms of your experience as it relates to upskilling, where you'd just like to just log a comment or make an observation in support of NELSIP? We are conscious that there's a lot of content around this particular issue. Is there anything anybody else would like to raise? No. Okay. Good. Well, let's stop there then. So I'd like to thank you all for your contribution. I'd encourage you to attend other sessions that we've got planned. If you have any ideas, suggestions, observations around these sessions, please feed into Mark. We have got 3 more sessions in the diary after the next session, which is on equality and access to education, and we are looking for subject areas. We've got a few of our own, but we've left those deliberately open at the moment so that we can prioritise areas that people think are important. So that's deliberate on our point, and we'll take feedback on that, and then we'll start to load those into the system, and they'll be available on the website. You'll be able to see them on the website. And clearly we appreciate that other people in your organisation may attend those or be better suited to attend those, because different people in different places do different things. We are looking to get as much diverse feedback as we can. If there's anything you'd like to follow up on or anything you've got which you might want to share with us, feel free to contact Mark and feed it in. There will be other venues and other opportunities throughout the next few weeks as we start to put the NELSIP planning together, and we are available at any stage, so please feel free to contact us if you've got any other issues or you need quite any other information on the NELSIP. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you for your contributions. Have a good rest of the day and enjoy the 5 minutes you got back. Have a cup of tea and then move on to your next meeting.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank
you.
Thanks a lot. Take care.